Hello, guys and girls. The program you are about to hear will be both fun and educational, but it is not a substitute for medical advice. Although we are doctors, we are not your doctors. Hello, guys and girls. The program you are about to hear will be both fun and educational, but it is not a substitute for medical advice. Although we are doctors, we are not your doctors. Hello, and welcome to Travel Medicine. As always, I'm your friendly neighborhood internal medicine doc, Dr. J.
Hey guys, this is Dr. Santhosh, your pediatric infectious disease doc and researcher.
And Santosh, I take it by now you've had time to slip into something more recordable for this session, because it is Travel Medicine After Dark.
For you, yes, I am travel medicine at twilight, which is, it's almost there, but not quite.
You have sparkly vampires around?
Just one, and he ran away.
Well, I thought it was good time this week to resume our tour of the zoo. Now, last time we covered what animals have done for us, the medications that have been developed from them.
Their contributions to research,
This week, I thought we would give some of the other animals a chance to redeem themselves and see what things they are striving to bring forward to advance the human race.
We never kind of put this to the animals. We're being very, very judgy here for a pseudo competition that we set up all by ourselves here.
Dogs and monkeys led us to space, Santosh. Animals, there are animals in the zoo who have yet to offer so much as casual health advice. I mean, look, last week we ended with the beaver, who at the very least produces a substance that is more of a fixative and lends a strawberry or raspberry flavor, and while admittedly not used much, is still not used much in the food industry, still very popular in the fragrance industry. So Castorium. But so this week we're going out of the reptile house, away from the amphibians, passing by the birds, and heading into large mammals to see what things they can add to medical treatments in the future.
We're going to go to our closest cousins and brothers and sisters here in the mammalian world. Got it.
I mean, on a genetic level, I guess we're all close.
Yeah, that's what I was
You, me, about. These animals, bananas.
Banana. But, we're vertebrates. Most of us have got some hair. The females can give birth to live young, producing milk, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
So the first animal I'm actually going to give a chance to redeem itself is the giraffe, who I bashed on last time for having contributed nothing. Well, good news, Internet. The giraffe community heard me and reached out.
The giraffe community had nothing to do with this. This was your dedicated research and stuff. Finding the folks who had either experimented on giraffes or discovered something about giraffes that contributes to human health. Yeah.
Okay, but this was also published only like a month or so ago, so it's still pretty...
Are you genuinely... I mean, I would love to take credit for this, seriously, that your wonderful research and our first So We Bought a Zoo episode, and it got broadcast, and someone, either human or giraffe, heard us and went, it's our time.
That's how I like to imagine it taking place. So the giraffe genome was sequenced in full about 5 years ago. And when you think of giraffes, well, when you, as a doctor, think of giraffes, Santosh.
Yeah, okay. All right.
What are some of the first medical conditions you think would pop up?
let's see. I mean, they're large animals. With any large animal, we can talk about. There's just more body there, so you can get infections in your lower limbs that maybe could happen like that. Poor circulation. You could have poor circulation because the blood has to travel, and giraffes, I think, especially have these beautiful valves, I think, in their neck arteries and stuff to help pump the blood against gravity. So I don't know if you could have all of a sudden just like if a giraffe became a little hypotensive and they just started to wobble and get lightheaded, whoa, like that, and then lions rip them to bits
Well,
because it's the
considering
savannah.
that giraffes do battle by banging their skulls and necks together, yeah, they've
Oh,
got,
yeah, that's right.
so you're looking at, orthopedic wet dreams and,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
or
All
neurosurgery,
right.
I guess. Depends on
Or
who's going to lay
neurosurgery.
claim.
Yeah, probably both of them together. Taking care of
Um,
spinal cord transections.
but I would think one way to offset all those circulation issues would be to develop compensatory hypertension.
Oh, yeah. The blood pressure in a giant camel leopard is probably much different from ours.
So, this team of researchers from China, Norway, and Denmark compared the genes of a Roth's.
Sorry. All the places where the giraffes are. sorry, sorry. Just you'd think that the African folks would be getting there first. Okay, go ahead.
Researchers from China, Norway, and Denmark compared the
Yeah.
genes of a Rothschild giraffe, which is
Mhm.
what your mental image of a giraffe most closely resembles, with
Okay.
those
Okay.
of 50 other mammals, including some of their closest relatives, like the zebra-sized okapi and others. And the DNA showed some unique mutations linked to cardiovascular features, bone growth, and the sensory system.
Oh, this is so cool. So actually, instead of studying physiology, they use the genome in order to study these differences. That's really cool. Okay.
So they found 7 mutations that were unique among giraffes, and in humans and mice, mutations in this same gene are linked to cardiovascular and skeletal defects. So, with a little bit of CRISPR magic, the team then inserted giraffe mutations into this gene called FGFRL1 in a group
Okay.
of mice. Don't worry.
Okay. So we made genetic mouse giraffe hybrids, which is awesome. So it's kind of weird when you put human genomic features into a mouse. We actually have a term for that. We call that humanizing a mouse. That doesn't mean that you're like, making them more sympathetic to our existential condition. It means that you give them humanized features, and often you can use this for testing immune systems or blood types and stuff. But in this case, you're girafficizing a mouse, I guess.
Jazzercising? Giraffing?
Giraffifying.
But these mutant mice did not grow long necks or show any obvious change in their cardiovascular system. I want to
Oh,
emphasize that. Not the they didn't grow long necks part. I would hope that would be obvious. But uh, no changes, no noticeable changes to their hemodynamics, meaning their vessels didn't change, they didn't produce any new proteins, no apparent effect of these giraffe genes. So the team
okay.
decided to see how animals would respond to high blood pressure, the normal condition of a giraffe.
Okay. So if you
So,
induce high blood pressure chemically or something like that.
mhm. So of 10 modified mice, 5 were given a drug to induce high blood pressure, which I believe is mitogen. I'm going to have to check. I need to
Okay.
go back to the paper. And also injected the drug into 5 normal mice. The 5 normal mice, the control mice,
The
all developed
non-giraffified mice, yes.
the normal mice developed hypertension and associated kidney and heart damage from prolonged hypertension, but all the mutant rodents, the jazzercised ones, the giraffe ones. The giraffeid mutant rodents,
Okay.
including those given the drug, actually stayed healthy with their blood pressure barely rising at all. So
Cool.
it has a invisible but reactive effect that counteracts the normal effects of hypertension.
Neat. Oh my God. So if we jazzercised ourselves or giraffified, potentially we would mitigate, I guess, the end organ damage from high blood pressure. I mean, it's still a bad thing because you're kind of then giving permission for people to treat themselves badly and still get high blood pressure, but their kidneys and stuff wouldn't get shot the way that it normally would with years and years of high blood pressure.
Now, this isn't an end-all, be-all, of course. First off, we don't know how this would translate to humans until we start creating giraffe-human hybrids, and I think we're at least a few years away from that.
Yeah.
Second, there's a lot of genes that affect high blood pressure. There is no guarantee that this would have all the same effects, but it does open up some potential areas for future study for human medicine. They also have, some of the best eye development and vision of all hoofed mammals, and sleep only
Okay.
40 minutes per day and 3 to 5 minutes at a time. Not that we are going to take on those abilities. That would be crazy.
That's so.
I just wanted to share giraffe facts.
Yeah. When we're saying like, oh, he's got eyes like a hawk, should we be more like, oh, he's got eyes like a giraffe?
No, hawks are still far better, but if you are
Okay.
idolizing hoofed mammals, then yes.
Sure. Okay.
Giraffe is really top of the food chain.
Very cool. Okay, gotcha.
One of the things to be worried about in giraffes, and apparently in humans, now this is not a clickbait to terrify you, this was simply an academic point of interest
Okay.
noted in correlation. Listening
Sure.
audience.
Yes, yeah. Good preface. I like it.
I feel like I need to, because we know that for most cancers, risk increases more with age, as well as a number of factors like smoking or exposure to radiation or things like that. But what about the effect of having more cells in the body? In what could have come straight out of, I don't know, a Twitter poll, somebody asked, can taller people be more prone to cancer because they have more cells?
Oh, okay, gotcha. And this has to do with, just the more cells you have, the more cell divisions that they are. And so this is just a statistical feature. But I guess you could go even further out, right, Josh? Like you could go, what if you had a really big animal, the
Well,
elephants
we'll
and
get to
whales?
the animals in the moment, but
Okay.
I'm not done terrifying you yet.
Yeah.
Not that
All right.
you're particularly tall.
No. I'm going through other things like if you have a tall bald man, like are they gonna get more melanoma because they're closer to the sun?
Actually, you're not wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay. All
So
right.
So you'll laugh because let's start by talking about some of this research, and then we'll get back to the animals.
Sure.
Evolutionary biologist Leonard Nunny at UC
Okay.
Riverside
Hmm.
looked at 4 large-scale surveillance projects on 23 cancer categories. And when he basically did a meta-analysis of the data, he found that all of these studies established that tall individuals are at an increased risk of cancer, with overall risk increasing about 10% for every 10 centimeters, or 4 inches for those of you not in the metric system,
Oh,
10%
interesting.
for every 4 inches in height. Now,
Wow. Okay.
there, again, just like with the hypertension, there are a lot of factors that independently influence both height and cancer risk. But testing your, height increases cell numbers and more cells directly increases cancer seems to be supported. It was published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. Great name for a journal.
Yeah.
They do some fun studies, some others, but It's
Yeah.
just a wonderful name. Now, when he performed the gender effect to see if there was a difference, being
Okay.
tall was on the risk of thyroid and skin cancer was high in women, but for men, skin cancer stood out, such as melanoma, show an unexpectedly strong relationship to height. Now, it's not because they're
Oh.
closer to the sun, but because
Okay.
the hormone IGF-1 is likely it's a growth factor that's at higher levels in taller adults.
All right. That's
The only
I was totally joking about the melanoma thing before.
of the 18 cancers among the sexes, only 4 showed no difference in height.
Okay.
Pancreas, esophagus, stomach, and mouth. Doesn't care how tall you are, how short, what gender, those seem to appear equally based on the factors he looked at.
Right, right. And so these are all, by the way, mathematical and statistical tools that he's using to try to isolate these variables without explaining it in too much detail. Got it. Okay.
So now let me bring you briefly back over to the next exhibit, because if all else is equal,
Yes. Okay.
long-lived animals should experience higher incidence of cancer than small, short-lived animals. That's why mice usually don't get cancer unless we induce it. Why big dogs are more likely to get cancer than small dogs. Why older animals or older creatures are more likely. So,
Yeah.
when you start getting up to larger sizes, there is no tendency in some very large animals to be more cancer prone. This is called Peto's paradox.
Oh, okay. After like a Dr. Pito paradox being, hey, there really should be much, much higher rates in cancer in giant friggin' animals. So blue whales, effluents.
So let's turn around. So
Okay.
let's move on to our next zoo exhibit and see if we can resolve Peto's paradox, which is quite the elephant-sized mystery. And oh, look, over here we have an elephant.
Hey,
So,
there's an elephant
Santosh,
in the room.
thank you. So why do elephants not get cancer more living as long as they do and being so large?
Okay, I'm thinking that these animals had to evolve over time, right? So when you had gigantism evolving in these creatures, so the trait of being very, very large in modern elephants, modern whales, and this kind of a thing, over time, they, started off a certain size, and then generation by generation, the larger ones were selected out, and they still had to survive and stick around, which means that those animals, which had something in them aside from gigantism, but if they weren't able to control this, cancer, bigger animal, more cancer type of a thing, if they weren't able to control that, so there has to be something genetic, Josh, about while they were getting bigger, that same evolutionary period, when we get to modern elephants, they had to have brought along something in their genetics to fight off cancers even as they got larger and larger. But I think that's my favorite explanation.
Joshua Schiffman, pediatric oncologist out at the University of Utah, and his team confirmed that Peto's paradox is a real phenomenon in elephants by studying necropsy records from the San Diego Zoo. And
Oh,
only about
okay.
5% of elephants or less die of cancer, compared with 11 to 25% of humans. So they took
Wow.
samples of elephant blood, because that's the easiest way to start, and found that elephants have at least 20 copies of the P53 gene from each parent.
Oh, the great gatekeeper, the
So
master controller. Yeah.
Santosh, in as concise, succinct, and brief form as
Yeah.
possible, what do you remember about P53 from our earliest years of medical school?
Oh, yeah. So this is actually pretty easy to explain, right? Okay. Cancer, in its most fundamental explanation, is cells dividing out of control. and going places where they shouldn't go. So cell division is at the heart of cancer. It's super, super important. In our genetics are genes to encode a bunch of proteins to help our cells divide and to slow it down and to check the genetic code and the health of a cell to say, hey, you're ready to divide, or nope, stop, you don't divide and you die, kind of a thing. One of the most important genes that is a checkpoint for cell division is P53, and it performs kind of one of these last checks, Josh, where it goes, all right, you are ready to divide your genome and then split up into two cells. If P53 says yes, then cell division can go ahead. If P53 says no, then cell division has to halt and the cell heads towards apoptosis or kind of cell suicide and death. So it's not the only controller of cell division, but it is a major one. And you and I both know, actually, Josh, seeing cancer patients, if they sequence the genome of a cancer in a person and there's loss of P53, then we know that there's a poor prognosis. That cancer is really, really just going to divide out of control until we do something about it. So, yeah, that's P53, the master controller.
So it detects stress or damage in the cell and then stops it from dividing until the stress is passed, the DNA is repaired, or it kills the cell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as humans, we get one copy of this from each parent. We get some walking around genes.
That's all we need. Yeah, absolutely.
People who have a defective version usually get cancer in childhood, and their lifetime risk shoots up to 100% or so. So that's how necessary P53 is. Now imagine you're walking around with $2 worth of cancer protection. Elephants have 20 from each parent. 40 genes of P53. So the team exposed elephant cells to radiation to see what happens when their DNA gets damaged. And they expected...
it's a great way to induce cancer, right? You just random mutations, cells mutate out of control. Yeah.
They expected elephant cells to be better at repairing DNA, but instead the cells were actually twice as likely to die when they had faulty DNA.
Oh, yeah, because that's what it does, is the P53, part of the mechanism is it's part of this big sequence that detects faults in DNA that says, nope, if we divide, it's going to turn into cancer, so shut it down. And shut it down means that cell's going to age out and probably apoptose and then, self-destruct to save the rest of the organism.
So the solution elephants found for nonstop cell division was simply, we are going to throw in a whole bunch of extra killer genes so we overpower, by sheer force of will, any cancers attempting to start division.
This is so awesome. Yeah, you have a massively increased burden of cells and cell division because, Josh, those skin cells constantly sloughing off, they're dividing, gut cells, same thing, liver, they're dividing and replacing, old cells right up until the point you die. They're so constant. So 100%, this is so cool that you need co-evolved with all the other genes that made you big and tank-like is something to protect you from your own cells eating you up. This is so cool. Oh my God. What an awesome
thing. Again, short of using nanoparticles to deliver CRISPRed elephant genes to humans, the only way to make use of this discovery at this point in time is to find molecules that might mimic that effect, condemning damaged cells to death instead of trying to repair them. So right now, there's not necessarily a way to translate this into a human treatment, but that doesn't mean that there aren't teams working on it.
I think much more importantly, Josh, at least for biology as a whole, is this really does show evolution in action, how these traits were selected for. And a very, very simple device, which is overexpression, replication of a useful gene in context. Um, it should be noted, Josh, this may not work for us, right? We need a certain amount of cell division in order to keep living. So if we have an overabundance of apoptosis, of cell death, then the opposite might happen, right? So we might not be able to tolerate that many copies of P53. So it works for a big gigantic aminal, but not necessarily for us. For most of us, 2 copies is good.
Unless, of course, we begin to get as large as elephants, and if we are then having those kind of cell divisions,
yeah,
we can probably accommodate the extra copies.
yeah, but that's a more of a problem that could be addressed with exercise and limiting calories. But that's for a different episode. Yeah.
Thick animals apparently get less cancer, Santhosh. I'm just trying to interpret the results.
Sorry.
And in fact,
You're right.
let's look at the thickest animal of all, the whale.
Oh yeah.
Well,
uh-huh.
well.
All right. Okay. Well, I know you don't mean to do this on purpose. Yeah. What about whales?
I'll blow it out your hole.
You're making me blue.
We'll have to get over this hump. Back to the episode. Scientists have studied potential cancer suppression mechanisms in cetaceans, the mammal group including whales, dolphins, and porpoises.
Yay! Yeah, Cetus the whale. Mm-hmm.
Whales, being some of the largest and longest-lived animals on Earth, should have a humongously ridiculous risk of developing cancer, but it's one of the least killers of whales. Mark Tollins, a professor at the School of Informatics, Computing, and Cyber Systems, decided to look at this along with a bunch of other groups, but from Netherlands, Massachusetts, and Arizona, they compared a whole bunch of different whales, looking at the genome specifically of the humpback whale in comparison to 9 others to look at how their cancer defenses are effective. And this was just published in Molecular Biology and Evolution. And when I say just, I mean like a year or so ago. So, in science, relatively recent.
Yeah, absolutely. Recent discovery.
At the most basic, as we said, cancer is a disease of cell division, which is often driven by evolution. We have different kinds of genes in our body. There are somatic genes and sex genes.
The somatic genes are the ones that are basically not carried on our X chromosome or Y chromosome. We used to think there was a pretty strong delineation between our genes on those somatic chromosomes, that they made up most of our body, and that the X and Y genes, the ones that were on those chromosomes, were sex determining. But it turns out that it's not as clean as all that. But yeah, basically the sex chromosomes are the ones that are carried and perpetuated through our gonads and ultimately passed on to our kids to help determine biological sex, whereas the somatic chromosomes are not.
So this team of researchers got a small skin sample off a adult female humpback whale in Massachusetts named Salt, known to researchers and whale watchers since the 1970s. So she's got a very well-documented history for a whale by people. Due to all the tours.
Sure.
So they sequenced her genome, compared it to a whole bunch of other mammals like the blue whale, fin whale, bowhead whale, and sperm whale, and found that some parts had evolved much faster, especially the ones that contain genes that control the cell cycle, proliferation, and DNA repair. So whereas elephants accelerate the death of mutating cells, whales try to fight it off by having more repair genes. Folks who run in and say, oh, let us try and fix it.
Gotcha. So when you find a break in a DNA, or if you have a deletion, a missense, any of these things where the DNA doesn't align properly, and you find a improper, structure to the DNA by one of these enzymes, that rather than shutting the whole damn thing down and say, oh, we got to pitch this cell, say, okay, let's actually repair this stretch, and boom, it's fine. Now you're ready to move on and replicate.
So a different group of researchers led by Tejada Martinez compared the evolution of genes in 15 different species, 7 of them being whales, and found that they have tumor suppressing genes that they gain and then mutate, so thereby lose or improve at a rate 2.5 times higher than other mammals. Now, this one focuses on repair, which could be very useful in a cancer drug where you might have to irradiate large numbers of regular cells along with infected or tumorous cells. So having better repair mechanisms genetically would be a much better way for humans to treat, rather than simply saying everything to die off. So it's another approach that eventually one day may be translated in if you can find compounds that mimic these effects. Because again,
Very
what would you
cool.
call a whale-human hybrid? Blue?
Well,
Dabba-dee, dabba-die? Dabba-dee?
So this is so cool. Number one, Peto's paradox. And Josh, sorry, I had to look this up while we were talking. But Richard Peto, who was, in all the way back in 1977, an epidemiologist and statistician from England. So he came up with this. So number one, a lot of cancer researchers have to look at this and say, hey, you know what? Peto's paradox looks to be real, number one. And number two, how could this be happening? And this is how we're really breaking down, oh my gosh, do we have a tumor suppressor like P53? Do we have redundancy of these genes, like multiple copies? Do cells mutate less? Do we actually have a better way of repair, a more efficient immune system? And it looks like, we're finding different strokes for different folks. Every giant animal here is figuring out a different way to solve this paradox. This is so cool.
Now, I know this isn't an animal you'd see at a traditional zoo, but given that Jurassic Park, whatever they're up to, just came out.
Sure. Yeah. Jurassic Park, the next one, which, by the way, to be very fair, all of the Fast and Furious by heart and have no problem with them getting up to Fast and Furious 25 or wherever the hell
Look,
they're going.
if you enjoy the movies, enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm not here to yuck your yum. I'm just not taking the time out of my day to learn the proper name for the film.
Okay, Dominion. Okay, fine. Jurassic Park Dominion.
Anyway.
Oh, the lack of caring in your silence. Okay.
So if we move to a different kind of zoo, like Jurassic Park, we can also look at what dinosaurs may have had cancer. Because if you want to start thinking of creatures larger than whales, well, there's only one place to go, and that's up.
Well, that's true. Although blue whale, as far as we know, largest animal that's ever existed, really. So, but land-based, absolutely, there were big things that are much bigger than
Blue whale, why must you mammal alone?
Yeah,
the biggest sea creature of all, and you're all on your own.
Would you get to the dinos, our tyrannical lizards?
So, dino tumors actually look very similar to human tumors, but larger. So it's a pretty universal disease. And the team traveled North America with a portable X-ray machine, scanning 10,000 different dinosaur vertebrae from over 700 museum specimens. Although they weren't just, randomly combing the deserts.
Yeah,
with a CAT
yeah.
scanner.
These were identified specimens where growths, tumors had been identified. Yeah,
They
and
looked at stegosaurs, triceratops, and yes, even the dreaded way back in the first movie, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
yeah, that's true. Now, we have a fossil record, and what is preserved there is largely harder tissues, right? So bone and associated structures. We have a few impressions of stuff like feathers, but not very easily. So more than likely, Josh, we're not capturing the full scope of all the tumors that a Tyrannosaurus could have, but anything which at least if it wasn't attached to the bone, if it wasn't a bone cancer or bone tumor, then it would have had to have been something that became calcified after the inflammation and stuff that does happen sometimes even with soft tissue cancers.
Which opens up a lot of thyroid cancers, or also cancers, any cancer that was metastatic to bone, that traveled to bone as a lesion
Oh,
from the
yes.
original.
Oh,
So
dude, did T-Rex have a prostate? And then it traveled to the... and then it metastasized to the spine. Now
I'll
I
admit,
have
we
to
have
know.
some weird dinosaur questions. Next trip to the La Brea tar pits, Santhosh?
Yeah, because that's the one of the big ones which will, I mean, lung cancer can go to bone, certainly, but one of the ones that we see in adult tumors is prostate cancer, which metastasizes to the vertebrae, right? So
You want to play
yeah.
Stump the Docent, folks? Ask them, did the Tyrannosaurus Rex have a prostate based on metastatic lesions? But no, only one group in this particular study had significant amounts of cancer, the hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs. They found 29 tumors in bones from 97 individuals of this plant-based group from the Cretaceous period. So they wouldn't have been in the movie.
No, they don't do anything dramatic is the problem, because they're just
why they should be prone to lesions in their tails is an unknown question. I mean, they ate conifers, which are of course very high in carcinogens.
Oh,
presumably.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't back that up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, I mean,
but the
yeah.
most common cancer found amongst all dinosaurs, not just hadrosaurs, were hemangiomas, which are, of course, benign tumors of blood vessels present in about 10% of humans. So not every dino cancer was necessarily a lethal dino cancer.
Yeah, hemangiomas, we see them quite a bit in pediatrics, not as much in adults, but if they do form in a child, oftentimes they'll just stay there, and either, they'll grow a little bit with the child, but, if they're not causing any trouble, we'll just leave them alone. So basically, when your blood vessels are forming and they're branching out to feed your various tissues, they can sometimes get tangled up, disorganized, into a big kind of vascular lump. And we only treat them if they cause any kind of compression, or if there's clots in there that eat up platelets, but they're quite frequent, actually. They're something that we're really familiar with.
And hadrosaurs, who are now known as Edmontosaurus, maybe because they're
Okay.
Canadian, I don't know.
There might have been found there. One of the first specimens is usually how that name kind of sticks.
But
Yeah,
about
okay.
3% of its total bones contained a lump of some sort.
Oh, wow, that's high.
Now, that could have just been, a dinosaur with a defective P53 gene, or it could have been familial disease, and we'll never know. But these are the hard-hitting questions you should be asking your archaeologists and paleontologists.
Well, we are trying our very best to find old preserved DNA. No, not in mosquitoes trapped in amber, you people, nerds, but in some other forms that we can find, uh, and it is possible that we could compare ancient animals and extinct animals like this to modern ones, which are big and giant, and try to compare, oh, are there more copies of P53? Are there some of those repair enzymes that have been replicated or have certain mutations in them? This is a very cool field of evolutionary biology that we could delve into if we could get our hands on a little more genetic material.
And, maybe now that we found the very first woolly mammoth skeleton, we can
Ooh.
start bringing stuff back.
Oh yeah.
Or just as likely, Jurassic diseases. So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it for this week. Now, Santhosh, I did mention a little bit before, but you've lived in LA for several years now, and we went on your very first trip to the La Brea tar pits. So why don't you tell us about that for this week's Just the Tip?
Oh yeah, thank you, Josh. I have lived here in LA now since 2010. No, sorry, since 2010, and I'm really embarrassed to say that I didn't take the opportunity to take myself and my family to one of the most famous sites here in Los Angeles. Josh, it was so cool. Now, from everything that you told me, it's not as large or tar filled as it used to be for various reasons, but it is still a beautiful outdoor, and I should tell everybody here, free exhibit just to walk around on the outside. You can certainly pay if you want to go inside of the museum where they have the assembled skeletons and stuff of the woolly mammoths, which are really cool. But it's a beautiful outdoor park. They have the tar pits there. And I think, Josh, the most interesting part for you and me were the scientists who are actually working there, some of whom are docents, and take the time out of their busy, busy day to greet tour groups. And she was a short little thing, so she stood up on a literal soapbox and gave us a lecture on ancient animals, how they got stuck in the tar pits, the information that they use from the fossils when they dig them up, and how they excavate, and how they can shape together a picture of what that area of California used to be like and how it turned into what we know and love today. And they are very sweet, they're very patient, and they are so brilliant and can answer so many different types of questions. So, yes, especially if you want a nice free day, the outdoor exhibits at the La Brea Tar Pits, just south there of the Beverly Grove. So if you want to do your capitalist duty and shop around and then come on south to enjoy some food for your brain and learn some really cool things about some ancient animals and ancient history of California. It is a great place to go. I absolutely love it.
It also has a giant hill delightful for rolling down if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh, we got to post that somewhere, Josh.
Absolutely. So I've heard.
He's asking for a friend, or he's telling about a friend.
That's it for this week. As always, we'd love to hear your comments, questions, and feedback. If you'd like to support us spiritually, emotionally, or financially, links to do that are in the show notes, along with links for further reading. The show is produced by me with a lot of help from Dr. Santhosh and friends. Our theme music is composed by Rachel Leisure. And until next time, as always, wash your hands, get your shot, wear a mask if you're going to be in a crowded area, find a country that doesn't have any infections or active war zones or anything going on. And when you've done all of those things, look for a medical site to visit, book a ticket, and happy travels.
Bye, guys.